Hello, friends! Welcome to That's Actually Marketing, a video series all about best practices and actionable tips and tricks so you can optimize your marketing efforts. I'm Naj, he's Dom. In this series, we're diving into all things e-commerce email retention strategy. Whew, that's a mouthful. We'll discuss the strategies that the best of the best businesses are using and delve into the do's, the don'ts, and the absolutely must-haves. In this episode, we'll be talking about retargeting emails. Let's get cracking. You probably don't know this about me, but I'm actually a fan of rom-coms. Some of my favorite moments in rom-coms are when our main protagonists may have been in a relationship, like friends, or maybe, a little something more, but lose touch over time until one magical day when there's a meet cute and their spark gets reignited. Pretty cute, right? Uh, what if I told you that retargeting emails can reignite that spark with your customers?
There's nothing better than a pot of ice cream and a good old cry on a Sunday night to Notting Hill. Um, Actually, those tropes and those narratives play on like a very fundamental part of who we are, right? Things we get distracted, lives get busy, and then suddenly someone comes back in your life, a person, or in our case, a brand, and reignite that passion, that desire for something. It's good.
Well, hopefully a brand hasn't been out of touch with someone for years and years to then reignite that spark. But we'll get into it. That's where a great retargeting email strategy comes into play. So I'm going to tee this up for you, Dom. What are retargeting emails, first of all?
Retargeting messages are messages to customers who have shown interest in your brand. Often it's by clicking, or maybe it's browsing your website, most likely with the aim of getting them to buy or purchase something, but sometimes to get them to leave a review or to generate content for your brand. So yeah, that's what they are.
Perfect. What would you classify as retargeting emails?
So there's lots of different types of retargeting emails. Normally we think of them as automations. And the most popular ones for e-commerce are probably browse abandonment. So when someone's just browsing your site, cart abandonment. So when someone adds something to the cart, but then leaves the website, or checkout abandonment, when someone gets to that final stage, they've put in their details and then they leave at the last moment. But there's other ones as well. So we often deal with custom types of retargeting emails. This might be if someone's clicked on a specific collection on a website, and then you can send custom events over to your CRM. So there's lots of different ways you can do that in a more granular way. So those are the automations. And occasionally we will send them manually as well. So for instance, if you have a weekly campaign for a sale or a promo, say Black Friday, then at the end, people who have shown interest in your sale but haven't purchased anything, you might send a quick manual campaign to them to try and squeeze out those last sales.
So thank you for clearing that up, because sometimes I feel that retargeting emails can be conflated with a bunch of other things, but I think as a great umbrella definition, you've hit the nail on the head. So let's get into why should people have retargeting sequences?
I think quite often people retargeted already on socials, and so, for instance, you'll get YouTube ads retargeting you, you'll get Facebook ads retargeting you. And I think the first question is, why bother with emails or SMS, et cetera, et cetera? And partly because most customers aren't impulse buyers, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but when I buy something, I am super indecisive. I'll take a look at their website, I'll forget about it, I'll get distracted, I'll look at a review on YouTube, like it goes on and on. So the more retargeting touch points you can have, the better. So that's like the first thing. The other thing is that we just get distracted, right? So we're busy, and even if we have the intentions of buying something, it might fall to the bottom of our to-do list. And the third thing I think is that you've got to outdo your competitors, right? You've got to find that extra percent to really make sure that you can do the one up on your competitors. And that might be with a good welcome sequence, but it also happens with retargeting emails as well.
Yeah, there's so much noise happening out there. I think there's a level of maturity that a lot of ecom brands have reached now. There are loads of technology available to even small companies. And so I think nowadays it's about making sure that your life cycle marketing, all the way from point A to point B, is as complete and as good as possible. Good in terms of like it's a great customer experience for the customer. I think it's about making sure that you've got that edge over your customers with making sure that your service and your products best reflect an excellent brand experience. So let's get into some bad practices. Do you want to touch on these really quickly, though?
There are lots with this, I think. Yeah, I mean, the first one, people just don't have it set up.
Mm-hmm.
And they might have one flow. A very classic example in the ecom world, especially if they're using Klaviyo. I like did the middle ground then. I was saying correctly.
Clever.
Yeah. Basically, they'll have an abandoned checkout flow, which is actually called abandoned cart in Klaviyo. It's slightly confusing. And they'll have one email and it will be templated. So the first point is that they just don't have enough retargeting automation set up.
Yeah.
And it's very low hanging fruit, this stuff. Quite often someone just needs an extra little nudge. So that's really important. The second thing is they're often just really badly designed because there's lots of dynamic elements in them. So people will show what product they've been looking at or what product was in their cart. It can be quite tricky to get your head round how to really structure a nicely formatted email. So that's the other thing. And the third thing is it's just like people are really heavy-handed with them.
Oh, yes.
Like, take a look now.
Buy now. You know you want to.
Yeah. And it's like, well, you might need a little bit more. You might need to be a bit more subtle than that, So those are the main things I would say. I mean, there are lots more, but those are the main three I can think of.
Yeah. So an anecdote from my previous experience, when I was working at Help for Heroes and helping out with creating automations for the shop, they hadn't even had retargeting emails set up. I think they had a very basic abandoned cart, but nothing else. And we immediately started seeing results once we started putting retargeting emails based off people's past shopping history or browsing activity. It immediately became like free money because it's not much more for any ESP to set up more automations, and it's working in the background. You set it up once, hopefully you don't forget about it, but you set it up once and it just keeps going and you're just getting like extra revenue. So for me, it's a bit of a no-brainer as well. It should absolutely send the right automations for the right people. It's easy money.
Actually, the one thing there, which a lot of times when I go into accounts, what they're doing is they're not excluding people. If they have got lots of automation set up, they're not excluding people in the right way. They're not filtering the right people out. So they're bombarding. So the opposite of not sending enough is bombarding people with retargeting emails.
Yes.
And that is infuriating. I've never felt more infuriated about something I'm so passionate about. I think it's so important to be very careful about the email volume for your prospects and non-buyers and for your customers.
Yeah, getting the right cadence. The balance is a really important one to think about. I think the thing to think about is the context of your brand and why customers would buy a particular product from you. So I think the famous one is people getting infuriated that they're getting recommendations for toilet seats from Amazon. That's a really funny one. How often are you buying toilet seats, right? But if it's something like food or maybe fashion around seasonal times, then yeah, absolutely. I think you can send something a little bit more often, but again, don't bombard. So that's a great point as well, Dom. So let's talk about good practices. What have you got for me?
Okay, so the first one is to segment. So they want to be a bit targeted. If you're a really, really new brand and you have hardly any marketing budget, it's fine to send a generic retargeting message. You don't want to overthink it. But as soon as you're starting to grow, you want to start branching out and becoming more targeted. The most obvious one is to non-buyers, prospects, or however you want to call them, and your customers. They will require different messaging. So with your customers, it might be to add to your collection. If you say are an apparel brand, fill out your wardrobe with our stuff, etc., etc. It's going to be completely different types of reviews, different types of content. The second type of segmentation, especially on abandoned cart, is by the value of how much it is. So say if someone's put 100 quid worth of items into their cart and that gets them free shipping or another type of offer, you want to make sure that you're hitting them with that messaging. And then clearly the other type of segmentation is around what they were looking at. So it might be the products they were looking at, the collections they were looking at. And you can either do this dynamically, so you're sending the products over to the emails dynamically, or you can begin to segment based on collections, and you can kind of manually set that up. So those are the three main things for segmentation. And I mean, they make a huge difference at this point in the customer journey.
Yeah, I'd love to expand upon the life cycle stages as well, versus non-buyer versus customer, because you wouldn't treat someone who's already bought from you as, hey, who are you again? By the way, do you want to buy these things that you've already bought before? No, you just wouldn't. So it's really important to treat the brand new business, brand new customers, and people who are already loyal fans in a slightly different way. They're both equally as important, of course, but you don't want to send them the same generic messaging, products and collections. So I was just thinking about things like, say, for example, you have a product which needs peripherals. Yeah, it makes sense that if someone has bought, say, for example, something like a hair straightener from you, right? You want to try and upsell other hair-related products. That makes sense, like maybe hair oil or maybe a different type of hair thingy-majig, or do that. As you can tell, I'm an expert in hair products. So it really is about thinking about the extra level of detail, thinking from the customer's point of view of what would be most useful to them in different moments in their lives and their different buying stages. So thank you for that, Dom. The next good practice that I'm passionate about, I want to talk about, is consent. So, Dom, can I tee this up for you? Can you talk a little bit about good practices of consent and retargeting?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the most basic things for retargeting emails is that people have to give, especially in this country, in the UK, you have to have consented to receive marketing communication from a brand. And that might be through pop-ups, sign-up forms. It might be through surveys and quizzes.
Yeah.
We all know there's a variety of different ways. It might be post-checkout, and that's really important. And actually, I think my experience is that a lot of brands try to do this, but the problem they have is that they haven't collated all their different sources of consent into one email list.
Yes.
Right? So you end up, things kind of leak and fall through the gaps. I'm not sure we should be
ominous.
And so people get missed off, and then they start getting these retargeting emails when they either get them when they haven't consented, or they don't get them when they have consented, because things are a mess. And that's so important.
I think the trend in tech now certainly seems to be moving towards more of a zero-party and first-party world, where it is really all about consumer first. It's about taking care of people's data. It's all about privacy, protection, as we can see with a lot of the legislation in recent years, and Apple's movements towards basically making a lot of email marketers panic about data. So there's two terms that I want to highlight here, which is zero-party data and first-party data. So zero-party data is information proactively provided by customers through forms and surveys, and first-party data is collected from the brand, from the company, based off customer behavior, which they've consented into. So, for example, clicking on the little accept cookies notification at the bottom of websites we seem to be running into all the time. So I think it's really important to make sure that if you are sending out emails, and especially emails that are personalized based on people's data, that data should have been consented to from the customer for collection.
Yeah, I also just want to pick up the point what you were saying about how the landscape is changing, because I think you're so right. Consumers' expectations are so different from what they were even 5 years ago. People are more savvy, they have more knowledge about privacy settings, and they expect a certain standard from brands now, and they get more and more annoyed when brands aren't meeting that. And this is a classic case of brands having to keep up with the changing landscape of things. So yeah, I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, and that's why email is, well, we might be a little bit biased here as email geeks, but I think email is more important than ever because people have to opt into it and you develop that relationship with people. It's not the same as grabbing third-party data about people and then sending them ads. It's a completely different dynamic. And so I think that's why I would advocate for every company having some sort of newsletter and some sort of relationship that they nurture with their customers through email. But again, might be a little bit biased. So let's talk about the types of email and content that appears in retargeting emails. So from your experience, what have you seen and what works best?
Yeah, and we can maybe speak about this very briefly in terms of how to set up certain flows. I think specifically when you look at a standard browse, an abandoned cart, abandoned checkout, the first email and automation will just be a reminder. It doesn't have to be a huge deal. It can be a reminder with a few brand benefits and a bit of social proof, maybe a couple of reviews based on where they are in the customer journey. And that's what every brand should be setting up. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. And then you can begin to take this a bit further with other emails. It might be social proof email, but based on a specific angle or problem that someone's having. Okay. Maybe if you're selling supplements for joint pain and you're talking very specifically about how people want to start doing more exercise, but they can't, you can have loads of reviews around people going, I could walk an extra 20 minutes today, et cetera, right? So those kind of things. And then that's one. The other one is brand comparisons. If there's a big player in the market and you know that people are going to be shopping on their website as well, those are really important. And then the other ones, and this is more, I wouldn't say controversial because I'm not sure how controversial some of these practices are, about upgrading discounts or sending new types of discounts and offers to people. And this will completely depend on your brand and what works for you, whether it's worth getting a smaller margin on the sale to increase sales or whether it's not. And that completely depends on your CAC to LTV ratio. I mean, there's so many things that go into working out your promo strategy. But yeah, those are some of the main types of emails that I see and I would put in place.
Yeah, I love talking about comparisons because that happens a lot with smaller brands. I see that may have an alternative product to what people might be able to get in their local supermarket. So, for example, I see it a lot with eco-friendly brands, maybe like vegan makeup, and they might say our products are. Unlike these other products are this, and this, and that might be the persuasive factor that pushes people towards conversion. So yeah, all great bits of content that we've touched on, and hopefully we'll see more examples of this in the emails that we're going to review. I'll be back with you in just a minute. All right, awesome. We're getting into this section, my favorite section of these videos, which is looking at emails and breaking them down and getting inspiration and getting all of those good best practices out of them and seeing what other brands are doing. So Dom has picked these emails today. I'm looking at these with fresh eyes, and yeah, we'll get straight into it. So Dom, could you set this one up for me a little bit?
Yeah, so this is Huckberry. They're a kind of, I was about to say rough and ready apparel brand, an American brand, and they've got some great stuff, some really quality premium clothing. And I got this a long time ago, but I also think this is off really good emails as well. I think I got both.
Shout out to Really Good Emails team.
Yeah, such a good platform. Providing constantly good information. Constantly, lots of good information.
Always, all the time. They don't sleep.
Yeah.
So I can immediately, just from like the design. Obviously, we have to talk a little bit about the design, and then we can get into the various elements. But yeah, just from based off what you were saying, I can immediately tell from the design that they're going to be slightly above average with regards to price points. Nice minimal color schemes. And one thing I always say to people, if you want to make your designs look polished, go for fewer colors because less is more. And it also makes sure that the products shine more than the actual design of the email, of course. So this looks to me, I'm not a detective or anything or a scientist, but this looks to me like an abandoned cart email. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're right.
So let's take a look. So we've got this top bit here, a little bit of copy. It looks like your cart still has some gear in it. Just a heads up, we can't guarantee you'll stick around long. Urgency, certain sizes, styles, and exclusives tend to go fast around here. Hit the button below to check out in just a few seconds. All right, any comments on the copy that we've got up there?
Yeah, I mean, one thing you mentioned, urgency, and that is probably legitimate urgency because carts aren't going to be saved forever.
No.
So even though it's not going to really push someone into action because I'm not sure how fast they are, but still occasionally when I shop, I know with certain brands, I'll use adding to cart as a kind of saving my favorites. I'll sometimes it'll be like 8 or 10, especially with an apparel brands like Zara, when I'm vaguely sure I want to buy something or vaguely not sure. And so if someone sent me an email saying they're all about to disappear, I would probably go and see what I did again. So I think that's good, and that pushes a slight little pain point.
Yeah. Especially with clothing brands and especially with brands that are not super fast fashion, like they have loads and loads of stock for particular things. I think this is a legitimate thing as well, where they might have, if you're a clothing brand or a product that doesn't have too much stock of something, I think that's a legitimate bit of copy that you can pop in there for sure. As we go down, I love the big images of the products as well because gosh darn it, sometimes I can't remember what I put in cart, so a lovely big previews of the product, very helpful. What do you think?
Yeah, and this is a very niche design issue of a lot of retargeting emails that are pulling in dynamic elements and elements what people have looked at, but they often don't cut out the background of an image, so it looks blocky and kind of basic.
Yeah,
this looks fresh. Like this is the element of an abandoned cart email that often looks really bad and like a child has designed it. But yeah, this looks good. You've got the price. I always and ah about the price. Sometimes it can put people off. Sometimes I don't always think the price is that necessary, but it's good. They've got a bit of product information there. Sometimes all you need is just the name of the product, but it's nice. They've got a bit more here. But yeah, I think you don't necessarily need to tell them that the color is black. That might not be useful information because you can see the color is black on the
you can see it's black. Yeah. I think, thinking about like what, if your product, like it was sometimes, say for example, you might have the same product preview, but there's like different colorways or something. Yeah, that might be helpful. But I think it's really nice having the image removed in these. And if you can, when you've got your product previews, try and make them look as integrated with the email as possible because you want them to shine. One thing I wanted to highlight here as well is the great copy for CTAs. It's not just shop now, it's check out now, which is urgent. You want to check out now and make it yours. I think I'm always a fan of like unique or different CTA copy.
Yeah, we've discussed about this before, right? And especially in the last welcome sequence, it's these small details in an email which are often forgotten about. People end up using templates and seeing something in their inbox which is just shop now, so they just use that. And these extra 10 minutes attention to detail makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, also, now that we have tools like ChatGPT or Bard or whatever tool of choice, quick hack I can recommend to people: if you're really stuck on CTAs, ask ChatGPT to generate some ideas, and you can kind of mix and match from there. Because sometimes I know, like with word economy, it can be really difficult to make 3 or 4 words sound compelling.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, that's the hardest part of copyright. So it's not easy, but it's easier to write a 1,000-word article and waffle. It's much harder to say everything you want to say in 3 words.
Yeah, I mean, tell me about it. I waffle on all the time, and it is easy. So let's get into this bit, which I think is really interesting. And I feel like a lot of abandoned cart emails don't have, like, straight
Yeah.
up don't have, and I think it's such a missed opportunity. So, can you explain what this is?
Yeah, so this is just more products that people might like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I'm not 100%, this is me speculating. One of the reasons brands don't have this is because it can, in some ESPs, it can be a bit awkward to set up because
Mm-hmm.
you need to basically have catalog feeds. The ESP has to have that uh, capacity, and then you need it to be personalized based on what they've already looked at, but excluding those products what they've already looked at. So there will need to be some setup
Mm-hmm.
there. If you're not doing this completely custom built. So
Yeah.
that's potentially why people don't have it. But yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
great because not everyone is going to be at the end of the customer journey, i.e., they're about to make a sale. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of people here might still be umming and ahhing. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to still give them lots of other, you want to dangle as many carrots as you can in these emails.
Yeah, yeah, it's great if you have the capacity to, yeah, have automatically have a widget or something in your email that can recommend based off someone's purchase.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, I think it's a lot easier to get hold of that technology. It doesn't have to be the most expensive compared to, say, like 5 years ago, I think 8 years ago now, when I was first implementing this. And it's so worth it as well, because what you're essentially doing is you're educating people about your product range, you're giving them relevant, curated recommendations as well. So I think it's so worth it if you can. Don't forget about this if you have the capacity to do it. 100%.
Yeah, and I was also going to say with the power brands, a lot of emails are replicate window shopping. So
Mm,
it's people who aren't necessarily going to buy straight away, but they like looking at things. So
mhm.
it's so important for those type of brands, which are very aesthetic led and require a lot of touch points before someone might purchase something.
Yeah, totally. I was going to say, if this email wasn't an abandoned cart email, if it was like one of those retargeting emails based off browsing activity, or maybe a like that
Mm.
someone has bookmarked, like a favorite or something. Again, this is so valuable as well, because if someone's like, "Oh, looking at the thing that I liked, I'm not that convinced about it," you can recommend more stuff to them based off what they
Mm.
favorited or liked or looked at. So, super valuable section of an email here. And then finally, we have a nice simple footer. Um, it's really nice. I think people know what social icons look like, so I don't think you need to be too specific about them. Although now, at the date of recording, Twitter, I just took a look at my phone, and Twitter changed from like the blue bird to the white X on black. So
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows anymore? So yeah, any comments on the footer?
No, it's nice and simple. I don't think you need to be too complicated. Occasionally, what people will do is
Mm-hmm.
reiterate the benefits. They might have a trio of benefits like free shipping, uh,
Mm-hmm.
cruelty free, these kind of like
Oh yes, yeah,
classic benefits.
yeah.
I'm always a little bit suspicious of how much a difference they make, but it very much plays into that comms work on a subliminal subconscious level for consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
the more of these small touch points you can put in, the better.
Yeah, when we're talking about brand experience, we're talking about every single touch point that a customer has with your brand, emails included, footers included. And so if it strengthens your brand to talk about those values, then definitely consider putting them in your footer. One just a very tiny, like nitpicky thing. Well, not nitpicky. I think this is a great thing. So trouble checking out. We're here to help. Reply directly to this email. Shoot us a note at support@huckberry.com. Notice how the email link itself is a different color to everything else, just so it's really obvious. Just little details like that can really help, and you can notice that it's a yellow against a blue. So really basic color theory there. Very nice. So yeah, overall, I really like this abandoned cart email. It's really nicely designed. It's simple, and there's little details there that kind of move from good to great. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think so. I also just think it's worth saying that it is quite hard structuring retargeting emails in a nice way because you have these dynamic elements. So especially I've often found the first section quite tricky because you want to show them the products they were looking at as quickly as possible, but then you also want to lead in with a nice angle at the top. So I think that's why we see so many badly designed retargeting emails, because it is a bit tricky putting all these elements together.
Yeah, also just from putting myself in the shoes of like tired marketers in small companies, sometimes you just want to set stuff up, you set and forget, and then you just use whatever template is available to you in whatever ESP you're using, and then call it a day. But the thing you need to remember is that people are more likely going to be seeing these transactional emails more than your actual newsletters. And so it's worth having that extra detail because, it's so worth it to have a well-designed abandoned cart email that better reflects your brand. For sure. So the next brand we're going to talk about is Larq. So while I set this up, Dom, could you set up what Larq is?
So people listening probably have some vague idea of who they are, or maybe have heard of them in the backdrop of the D2C world. They were on Shark Tank, I think, a long time ago, and their main product is essentially, or their USP is self-cleaning bottles. I think I've got that right. And they have these promises of cleaning 99.99999% bacteria, etc., that kind of thing. And I got these emails in my inbox into end of 22, and I got about four. I got 4 abandoned checkout or abandoned cart emails, and there's quite a lot to go through with these 4. It's interesting, and I think there's some really good stuff, and there's some stuff that a lot of brands can learn from.
What was the cadence of the email? So you said you got 4. So what was the spacing between them? Do you know?
That is a very good point. I would have to check.
Okay, cool. I can you can check it. I'll just pop it in and edit there. That's fine. Okay, so let's look at the first email you got. So muted colors. There's a very simple design structure here. So let's get into it. First off, we've got the actual dynamic bit, which is this thing here. So first of all, we've got Larq. It's time you quench that thirst. Ready to take the plunge. Here's what you left behind. I think here's what you left behind is it's a pretty standard copy for abandoned cart emails. And then you have bottle filtered checkout now. So very simple. Any comments about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to the idea that it's quite tough to design these emails, right? We saw in the last email, in the Huckberry email, a nicely formed first section. I think there are some spacing issues here. It looks like these have been set up in a bit of a hurry. If that's maybe that's a bit harsh, but there's some spacing issues between the images and the button and the header and the body text. And like you said, it's fairly generic copy. You've got it's time you quench that thirst, but there's probably a lot more you could do and a lot more you could play on with the branding, I think, here. Do you think, or what's your thoughts with this, your initial take?
Yeah, I think the spacing is what sticks out to me. In design, there's a hierarchy of information of the elements you want to look at, and it's time you quench that thirst, ready to take the plunge. Here's what you left behind. I almost think, I don't know if you even need this element here ready to take the plunge. Here's what you left behind, maybe. I don't know. I think with
Yeah.
copywriting, less is always more. And also, you're taking up really valuable scrolling space or real estate, as I call it, up top before you get into the actual product. So it's worth just pushing everything up so someone can see the product and was reminded of, oh yeah, I left that in the basket. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Just saying, because the subject line is for this is "Oops, did you forget something?" So it's
Okay.
always saying that. So you can literally the small mini funnel of copy there is "Oops, did you forget something?" It's time you quench that thirst. Here's the product. You don't need anything more than that, I don't think.
No, for sure. One tip for people watching, our friends watching, is if you can take it out, take it out. It's people are distracted, busy. You never know when they're going to get a notification that they're just going to go straight off to. So hook them in as quickly as possible. Then we get into have a question. We're here to help. Contact us at hello@livelight.com. Yeah, always nice to just reach out, leave the door open for people if they have been having issues with checking out. You don't know, maybe there's some issue with payment or something like that. And then we get into this section, which is a little bit of social proof. So I ordered this bottle to beat water bottle smell once and for all. Ooh, I got a really... I felt something when I saw water bottle smell. Yeah, it's really visceral. Yeah. Oh, okay, that's interesting. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think everyone's had that experience of opening their water bottle after a few days, and it is monstrous. Yeah, it's thinking about it, isn't it? Yeah, it's good that I think that works really well, and they've got a few more. Like they've got the stars beneath and 4,000 plus reviews. They could probably make more of this. I think they could put more reviews, and they could. It's more important than follow us on Instagram, I think.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And also they've put the name of the product that this person bought, but they haven't actually got a picture of the product. And so I would probably opt to have a picture of the product as well that someone reviewed very, very favorably. Follow us on Instagram. Okay, one thing I would say is that I would split this section up and then split this section up, because it's like, it looks like there's this Sahara of white space in between these two things. And there's something around, like, again, spacing, I always say like white space does equate to good design, but in this case, I think it's just a load of, nothing. So follow us on Instagram. Lots of very shishy pictures of bottles that people are carrying. What do you think about this? How do you feel about like social media stuff and abandoned cart emails?
Yeah, I think it depends. So this is the first email, so maybe it's okay. But realistically, you really want to you're trying to do one thing. It's a classic, do one thing in each email. And I do think that all we're trying to do is get them back on the website, especially with what they've looked at. So do we really want them to go on Instagram at this point? Probably not when they're so close to buying something. It's just not the main. It's a bit distracting for me. I think it would be fine in, say, a browse abandonment browse abandonment email, because it's still could be still slightly middle of the funnel.
Yeah. But when someone is this close to purchasing, probably not the best idea. Yeah. So I would definitely think about those levers that you can pull to persuade someone to purchasing as quickly as possible. So social proof is a very good example of that. Not necessarily this, so I think maybe you could go without this. Free shipping on orders over £80, over 4,000 happy hydrators. I think that could have been moved up, because that is the stuff that are like, oh yeah, free shipping. That's definitely a lever you can pull. Yeah, that's what we talked about beforehand as well, about segmenting based on on what's in their cart. So you can really push that even more for people who have got a higher cart value, but equally for everyone. I mean, just put that in the banner at the top. Really important. Yeah. They've also repeated 4,000. They've got, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but they've repeated the 4,000 number twice in the email. Maybe that's good, but it's also something to think about. Yeah, for me, I feel apathetic towards over 4,000 happy hydrators. And yeah, I don't know if it makes me feel any particular kind of way. I think maybe the free shipping on orders over £18 is probably more persuasive. And I would probably go as far as putting this as a banner um, up here,
Mm.
because it's all about bringing up that average order value, which you want, right?
Yeah.
Higher cost cards. So okay, so that was the first email, and we're gonna get into the second email.
So I've checked, and this was 2 days later.
Okay, 2 days later. Wowzers! I've never set up a multi one that was so quick, but maybe I missed out on a trick here. So I'm going to
Yeah,
share my
I send them
screen.
quite often, actually. I
Mhm.
sometimes send them even more. Sometimes I send them the day after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. So copywriters, your heroes, your geniuses. I can't imagine, like, well, I can imagine because I've had to do it, but having to write the same thing in different persuasive ways is so hard. So I'm looking at this. So we've got "You're So Close." Better hydration is just a few clicks away. Check out before your favorites. Yeah, great. And then we've got the same image, obviously, because it's the same image set
Mm.
in basket here. So yeah, let's have a quick chat about that cadence. So 2 days after, do you think that's too soon? That's too far? What do you think?
Personally, I think it's fine, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it's people are really close here,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the landscape is slightly changing.
Mm-hmm.
As we talked about earlier, people getting potentially more annoyed with retargeting emails and more focusing on their privacy because they want so many emails in their inbox.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, these people are close, right? I think they just need that nudge. And sometimes you get the first reminder email and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe. And then you just need something quickly enough to be like, okay, yeah, I will. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's my opinion on it. It's a tough one though, right? Isn't it?
It's tough. And it's especially tough when you've almost been too close to the product, which I've definitely been before. I'm
Mm.
sure you have before. And you probably need like outside help for, or just like get that external view of things to help you kind of change things up a little bit, because I think it can be easy to get in a rut. Because for me, I think one lever that they could have pulled out almost immediately is a free shipping thing, like down
Yeah.
here. um I also feel like sometimes customer behavior, sometimes customers, why did I say customers would be me? Sometimes people will pop something in a basket and then wait around to see if there's like a discount or a
Mm.
deal. So that's also potentially something that happens too. Thinking about the maturity of shoppers now. They didn't mix it up too much, so they've got again another bit of social proof here. A must have for anyone that travels or simply appreciates clean water. Uh, it's a bit of an odd one. I'm sure, like
Yeah.
I don't actively appreciate clean water, but thinking about it, I definitely do appreciate clean water because it is good for me as a human. What do you think about this?
It's a bit like it doesn't really pull on your heartstrings, does it, that much?
No,
This one. Not like
no,
the water bottle smell. But
no,
I guess if you're like a big hiker or something and like
yeah.
constantly struggling with that, maybe. I just think I don't know. This all comes back to ROI, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
this is you've created one template here. It probably takes about half an hour to update it with the second email.
Yeah.
So maybe it makes sense. Obviously, you're missing a trick because it's basically the same email, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're not really leading with any different angles. There's no huge changes, and this comes into play. This is the really tricky thing is when you're a small brand, it's probably worth doing this. When you get bigger, it's worth fleshing out your comms in a different way and bringing in different angles. Because to be
Yeah.
honest, this would kind of annoy me just getting the same email again
Yeah.
2 days later.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So we're going to see the other two emails, but one thing I would say here is, if someone isn't convinced at this stage yet, then you need to get more and more persuasive as the sequence goes
Sure.
on. And so I think for me, as a customer, I would have appreciated what can you do to persuade me? And I think this social proof was weaker than the visceral feeling I got from the first review and the email. And also follow us on Instagram again. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily needed.
Yeah.
Maybe thinking about what I would have written, or maybe what I would have pulled out, is maybe like a quick story about like what makes their product or their brand philosophy so good, so irresistible in this rather than this. But we'll see the emails, because I haven't seen them yet. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you're missing such a trick underneath that review. Just reiterate the brand benefits. I mean, there's all the classic ways of convincing someone that you're the best option for them.
Yeah.
Are not really here.
Yeah. Because I would love to know. So obviously, I don't know anything about this brand, and maybe what would be good is to reinforce things like we use this technology, and this is why it's better than just buying, a plastic water bottle at the train station. Just various things like that.
Yeah.
Also, I think what's not clear to me as well is like who is their customer? Are they hikers? Are they travelers? Are they sporty people? Because if you can niche down on that, it becomes so much easier to write content for your very specific set of people. What do you think? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, like 100%. And it does get tricky with this, especially because I was a non-buyer, so they might not have much data on me.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not picking up anything in a pop-up or an opt-in. And Larq do come across as a bit generic. That is kind of contemporary, minimalistic, maybe I do a bit of yoga, maybe I go to a hike in the countryside kind of thing. And partly because there's so many different types of customers that use water bottles, right?
Yeah.
Like it's tough to do, but I agree, and it's a nightmare. I think every marketer at some point has written copy, and it is a nightmare writing copy for a non-specific group.
Yeah.
It's like fluffiness. Everything becomes fluffy and vague. So I do agree.
It's so hard. Yeah, it's so hard. I think this is where the work of positioning and messaging is so important, because it makes things like this so much more powerful. Because if their USP is water bottles that clean themselves, and they were going to, the gym going crowd, like the gym rats, the people who are like very on it about their fitness, there's loads of things that they could implement in here with that sort of language. So we've got a second email that was pretty similar to the first one. So let's take a look at the third one.
So the third one came 4 days after that one. 4 days after.
Okay, 4 days after the second one?
Yeah.
Ooh, okay, interesting.
It's quite a random cadence, but...
Yeah. Okay, so we've got the third one. Aha! So something has changed here. So what have we got here?
We've got a discount, and and again, like there's design issues, but the discount is good here. I think it's, you've got a pretty premium based product, way more expensive than a lot of other water bottles people are probably buying. So price will be a massive factor. From my perspective, a lot of people have seen Larq, like the look of it, like the idea, but probably thought it's way more expensive than I'd normally pay for something like a water bottle. So I like this. It looks like it's a personal discount code, which is why it can expire in a couple of days. So that's genuine, that it will expire in a couple of days. And £5 off. The only thing I've noticed here just now is it says £5 off, and then underneath in Larq it's in dollars. So
yes. Yeah, okay. Interesting.
But so I can imagine can be quite awkward to fix, actually. But what do you think? What's your initial thoughts?
Yes, my initial thoughts. So, yeah, true to what I was saying earlier, people like me, their toxic trait is like hanging out, not buying anything until like a discount comes along, and they've come along with a discount. Now, that's great for me. I don't know if that is great for the business. Obviously, there's loads of testing needed to be done. There's also like, what are your business goals? What data are you going off from? Is it more important for you to get a first purchase in so that you can upsell in future? Or is it more important to have like higher price cuts? I think when you're implementing something like this, you do need to think about what your business goals are, doing the math, looking at like where you're at 30,
Yeah.
60, 90 days from now, a year from now. So yeah, again, brilliant for customers, but as ecom business owners and marketers, think about does this benefit you in the long run? So
Yeah.
testing, obviously. Yeah, I like the fact that it's a dynamic voucher. That's always good if you have the capacity to do that. Yeah, this is awkward when it's like pounds and then dollars as well. So yeah, folks out there, have a really good close look at your automations when they are being sent out to different countries. So yeah, so nothing too different here. Yeah, sorry, Dom.
I was just going to say on the price point as well. My suspicion is that Larq probably have quite high margins on their products.
Yes. Yeah.
$50 for a water bottle. I imagine that it's pretty decent, so they can probably get away with £5 off. What I haven't looked at Larq in the last 6 months, but it's that classic case of if you've got loads of other things you can sell to people and you know that their lifetime value is going to be massive over the next 60, 90 days, then you can afford to take more off because it makes more sense.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I would buy again from a water bottle company. I might buy one other bottle. I can't remember their full product range. I think they've got some other things in place now as well. So that's to think about. We've talked about this before. The classic example is like mattresses, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to, if you discount too much, no one's going to come back. It's going to take 5 years before someone comes back to you. If you're a supplement company, you can discount quite heavily on your first purchase because you know that people are going to be coming back loads in the next 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, the example I always think about are razors. So the razor itself is cheap, the blades are expensive. And so you can afford to discount the razor itself, but the blades, people do need to use them. And so I always think about that when I think about like, does that work for this product? What are the complementary things that people might be buying down the line with this product? So again, I'm not familiar with this company and their product, but it's definitely worth thinking about if you're giving discounts to first time customers. Does that serve your needs as a business? And again, nothing too different here. Of course, we've got free shipping, over 4,000 happy hydrators. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's a really interesting one. So essentially, it was 1 day, 2 day, and then 4 days. So it's like about a week after you popped it into your.
I think it was. Wait, what was it? It was 2 days. So the second one was 2 days after, and the third one was 4 days after. And then we'll find the next one is one day after.
Okay. And that makes sense when we look at the email, knowing what we know about the expiry date of the voucher, which is your £5 is expiring. I hate the idea of money expiring, so yeah, that copy works. Don't sleep on this exclusive offer, the clock's ticking. So yeah, it's effectively a reminder email for the discount that they've given you. And again, nothing too different below that. So use code for £5 off an eligible purchase in the next 24 hours. Ooh, yeah, urgency. What do you think about this bit and this cadence?
I think the cadence works. I think it's a shame they haven't changed up the email design a bit more. It's by this point, I'd be a little bit like, oh my God, another one. Uh,
Yeah.
and there's really just no extra. I mean, they're just playing on urgency right here and
Mm-hmm.
price point, rather
Yeah.
than here's why you should buy our product. Here's why it's going to be so good for you. They've not even put in any more
Yes.
reviews here.
Yeah.
So it's very much. This whole sequence strikes me as very much we're doing this as not as cheap as possible, but like as quickly and efficiently as possible in order to get these touch points in. But yeah, there's a lot more they could do. But I think the discount works well.
Mm-hmm.
Whether £5 is enough actually for 50
Mm-hmm.
bucks water bottle, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure it's enough for me to nudge me over. What do you think?
Yeah. So again, this is thinking about the who are the people you're marketing to. What do they really care about? If they really care about having a durable water bottle that cleans itself, that they don't have to worry about, and they don't have to worry about replacing anytime soon, then that's great. But you do need to reiterate what are all the reasons that make
Mm,
that is so valuable about this product. Um, and especially if you're a company where like your product is like the one thing and then there's variations of it, right? Like Larq. So yeah, having those persuasive elements in are going to be so important to reinforce, because yeah, if it becomes all about the discount, someone's like, well, that's still like £40 I'm going to pay for a water bottle, and they haven't been given any more reasons about like
yeah.
what is 10 times the value of the price of the product, then it's not going to be as persuasive as you'd like.
Yeah, and I do think that because water bottles tend to be cheaper, people are going
Mm-hmm.
to be price sensitive on this, even
Mm-hmm.
if they
Yes.
might be well off, even if they might be above average earners, their target market,
Yeah.
which is, I still think that people are going to be price sensitive on this product. So it would
Mm-hmm.
be, I'd be so intrigued to see. I'm sure by now they've tested different non-buyer offers. It would be so interesting to see the uplift on a bigger discount and what that means for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't have access. Obviously, we don't have access to that.
I don't
But
know. There might be a follow up episode. Yeah, a bonus
yeah,
episode or follow up like a year from now or something. So yeah, I think if you have a product which is above average in terms of price to other products on the market, I think you do need to try and reiterate what is so irresistible about
mm,
it. So for example, I purchased a backpack, like a to hold my laptop in, because I knew that I go to London every once in a while and I needed something that's fairly durable and also secure because it has expensive equipment in it. And so I did a load of research and I paid for something that was, much more than like just buying a backpack from somewhere. And because I cared about all of the different needs or jobs to be done, that this product needed to do. So I knew that it needed to be cushioned and made well and all that stuff, needed to be durable. And I think the company that I bought it from did a good job in reiterating all of those different factors to me, and which is what led me to eventually purchase the product. Have you had a buying experience like that recently as well, thinking
do you know
about it?
what? Backpacks are actually something that I see that a lot with. Like really good emphasis. I think, especially like in the last few years,
Mm-hmm.
uh, backpack and wearable products, they're
Mm-hmm.
really big on features,
Yeah.
adding modular features and outdoing their competition by adding bits to their products. So I think they're
Mm-hmm.
often very feature and benefit heavy in their comms, just
Mm-hmm.
from what I've noticed. And they
Mm-hmm.
do that really well. Yeah, so I bought a backpack a couple of years ago, and I had a similar kind of experience. Certain industries seem to do it better than others, and I think that's just because they've nailed their USPs a little bit more, and then some industries are more mature than others, others are less. So yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
wildly different out there.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I always say to other marketers, don't just look within at your direct competitors for inspiration. Look at how other verticals are doing it better. Some industries are going to be better at others than doing a certain marketing thing. So, how many water bottle companies out there are doing it well? You might want to look at, for example, backpack companies, bag companies, because they are very good at highlighting those features of the product. And I think that's probably what Larq needed in their abandoned cart sequence. Okay, we've got one last brand that we're going to do some commentary on. It's called Winc. This is a wine brand. I love thinking about things like food and wine, and obviously that whole industry, because it's so, people have very particular tastes, like it's so subjective, and so there's so many opportunities for personalization. Have you found that in your experience?
Yeah, you can go very granular, can't you, with what people want, the type of food that people want. You can begin to really cluster segments together based on their preferences. Yeah, it's so much easier than, apparel, you can do it with apparel, often because they have a large product range. But with food, the preferences is so specific.
So specific. There's moods, there's cultures, there's so many different ways you can go down. And with wine, obviously there's a whole kind of culture on its own, right? You have people who are very there's people who will go on wine tours and really go the extra mile in finding the best wine. So I love to take a quick look at this very nice, simple thing, and they've got very brightly colored CTAs. That's great. So you accidentally left some amazing wine in your cart. No biggie. You have wine in your cart, but it belongs in your home. Come back to Winc and we'll give you $20 off your first order. Oh, interesting. Let's do this. So, okay. That's interesting. So I wonder whether the code will be automatically applied. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting, this. It looks like it's automatically applied. Or that it must be. I was just thinking that potentially they're talking about previous email. I think it looks like it's automatically applied.
Yeah, I think just from my marketing ops brain, or MOPS, some people call it, I would just err on the side of like tech issues or what have you, and just have a backup promo code there just in case, because sometimes it doesn't always work for some reason. So that's probably what I would do. But getting into the sort of dynamic element
down there, isn't there? Yeah.
There's a promo code. Okay, got you. Yeah.
But it's quite strangely set up. I definitely think they need to explain to customers, we've been talking a lot about customer maturity and the expectations around marketing. And most people know that they're probably going to have a code 80, 90% of the time. So you need to explain that to people. You can't just say, we're going to give you $20 off. You need to explain how they're going to get that $20 off straight away.
Because what you're doing here is, if you're not really explicitly laying out how people get that, is you're opening up the avenue for your customer service department to get loads of emails. So be really explicit. And also, if you've got a promo code and you're willing to give that to someone, make it front and center. Make it a lot splashier, because again, this feels like, and especially for this product category, it's more important for them to get that first order, and then they can upsell and nurture that people up. So it's not a biggie if they're giving quite a good discount on the first order. So we've got lovely backgroundless product images here. Again, very designy. I think this is like a trend that I've seen more and more in recent years as well.
Yeah, I really like them. It's really clean. They stand out a lot. And you've got a really nice CTA. I'm ready for wine.
I'm ready for wine.
And actually, you know what? That's a really clever CTA. I mean, you never know how much thought someone's put into it, but it really strikes that Friday evening, I've had a long week, I need it now.
I'm ready for wine,
It works really well. It's funny how I think microcopy can be so powerful when it's done in the right way. That's really important.
It is a real superpower if you can do it well, for
Yeah.
sure. I'm ready for one. I know we've got this, which is, it just seems a little bit out of the way. Like, oh, we don't actually want people to see
Yeah,
it.
it's pretty weird.
So it's a bit unusual. And obviously we've got, social. Oh, okay. So here's something I want to talk about, a referral link. So it's a little bit hidden away, which is a shame. So, I think referral is so important if you're currently in that growth stage, right? As a
Mm.
brand. What's your experience been with referral type programs?
Yeah, I think they're more powerful than brands realize. That's
Yes.
what I think. I mean, this is a broader conversation around attribution and how much is done by word of mouth rather than through digital means. But my experience with
Mm,
especially high value goods is that a lot of people buy based on what their friends have bought.
yes.
That might not be the case for a biro, right? Or like a 50p pen.
Yeah.
But if you're going to go and spend 100 quid on wine, you might ask your mate where they got it from, or those kind of things. So, and especially with food and wine, which they're often very community based products. So
Hmm.
you'll go and drink wine at your friend's house. You'll go and drink it at a restaurant. Da 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 da. So
Yeah.
it's set up for that. So powerful. The biggest mistake brands make is that their incentive is not big enough. So they do
Interesting.
get £10 off when you invite a friend. It needs to be big enough for someone to take the plunge and
Mm.
risk that their status as a wine connoisseur.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, you've touched on something. This like social or cultural capital of
Yeah,
like when you recommend something amazing to people, it's like, oh, you are the hero of the day.
100.
And yeah. So I think having a good incentive for your referral program is going to be so worth it. And you're absolutely right as well with this being a social product, something to be enjoyed with other people as well. The amount of times that I've recommended to friends, or they've recommended to me, products, and I've just become a fan for life. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really important. So maybe do if you do have a referral program in place, maybe make more of it. Don't just have it be like a little link that's out
yeah.
the way as well. And again, like this is very important with regards to segmentation. You want to make sure that you're pushing it more to your loyal fans, your raving fans, your advocates, because
Mm.
they are going to be the ones that are recommending it to everybody else, right? Because they love your brand so much. And not so much
Yeah,
your new
exactly. Like,
besties.
just to give you another
Mm,
example, I
mm,
went to a friend's the other week, and they had a pizza oven, and we had pizza from that pizza oven. And
mm.
basically, the whole street had the same pizza oven because obviously someone was cooking it, it smelled amazing, and then
Yeah.
they asked, and then suddenly the whole street had it right. So these
Oh
these kind of
gosh.
products, it's
Yeah.
so important to really
Mm,
focus on that word of mouth marketing.
mm, hmm. So we've got this terms and conditions of the promo at the bottom here. Uh, so I absolutely understand the need to be very specific, but the problem that I found with e-commerce brands is like if your promo is hard to understand, you might risk annoying people
Mm.
because people will be like, oh, I thought I was going to get this, but I got this instead. And so try and strive to make your promotions as simple, as easy to understand as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to remove as much friction as possible from the purchasing decision
Oh, totally,
from
totally.
the
I mean,
purchase.
friction is our enemy in marketing. All right, so that brings us to the end of doing commentary on brands and how they're doing retargeting. So, Dom, what were some similarities and differences that you saw across those different verticals?
Yeah, I think what we saw was a lot of thought actually has gone into
Mhm.
some of those emails.
Yes.
And like the small copy, the micro copy, but overall, so what I would say is that this is what I see across the board. A lot of retargeting emails are kind of middle of the road. There's some really good bits, a lot
Mm,
of thought, but they're also just missing bits out. And it feels like there's this weird combination of effort into certain sections on them, and then they've just missed. They could have put an extra couple of sections with brand benefits, USPs, and they haven't put in. So there's kind of like that contrast, I think.
Yeah. I think similarities. One great thing we saw was lovely big product images with backgrounds removed, so they feel integrated as part of the email, and the product really should be the star of the show. I think there was something around, you got 80% of the way there, and then the last 20% was like, oh, we could have added a little bit more to persuade someone more effectively. But yes, I think, again, it really is down to what resource people have available, what tech they have available, how much time they've got to spend on their automations. But if there is one thing I would say to any budding marketer, any ecom biz owner out there, is do delegate extra time to your automations, because they work in the background and you don't have to think about them past front loading all of that effort. So it's worth that effort.
Yeah, 100%. One other thing I was going to say, and I say this about, and we touched on this in the last episode, is even though I think these retargeting emails are very conducive to revenue uplifts and all that good stuff, there is still a chance that people would have bought from you anyway. So you've got to be really careful that you're not attributing tons of revenue to retargeting comms when it's just these people would have taken a week because that's just how they're doing it right there, or like they're buying something for an event in 2 weeks' time and they would have bought it in a week anyway, and then you're attributing it to the retargeting emails or the retargeting when it's actually down to comms a bit higher up the funnel. So I think it's just important to remember that, and it's always worth saying that.
It's I'm going to say once again, it depends. I often, when I was looking at data modeling and attribution, I really like time decay, because it still takes everything into all of the touch points into consideration. But then there's always the last thing which pushes someone over the edge right into purchasing. But I think you can't forget that whenever someone makes a purchasing decision, it's very rare that it is just the one thing they saw and they were convinced immediately. It was probably the work of, over time, of seeing your brand name, getting familiar with it, seeing it here, seeing it there, and then finally being persuaded at the last stage.
Yeah, for sure. Consumer behavior is wildly complex, right?
Especially nowadays. I feel like it used to be a lot easier back in the day. Everybody was watching TV and on the same channel, seemed like 2-3 channels where I grew up, and and you see the ads, and it was fairly like pretty linear, I guess, buying decision and shopping journey. But now there's so many different touch points you can come across where you might be able to see a brand in advertising. So very complicated nowadays. In what context would you recommend multiple stage retargeting ads, or retargeting emails, or a multi-step abandoned cart email sequence?
In terms of having like multiple emails in
the flow. What context would you recommend that in?
I think it's always beneficial to have a few emails in your retargeting flows. I don't think you're ever going to. I don't think there's any downside to it. Basically, I do think there's a downside to it in terms of ROI, in terms of the effort you put in. I think the problem was with those Larq emails. It's clearly they wanted to put more emails in, but they didn't have the time or resources to do them, to really change them up. And that goes into dangerous territory, because then you're having 4 emails that all look the same and it begins to feel a bit spammy. So for me, it's always like, have multiple emails if you can put the time and you have the resources to it. If not, be very careful. That's the first thing. The other thing I would say, again, it depends on the product, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a new brand and people are a little bit suspicious of you, especially digitally, have a few more, a bit more social proof. That's always good. Also, if it's a higher cost item and the purchasing decision is longer, like mattresses, or I always come back to mattresses, for something else that's a high cost item, maybe luxury apparel, those touch points are really good. But if you're selling £5 socks, nothing against socks, love a good pair of socks, then maybe you don't need 4 or 5 retargeting emails.
It is so dependent on the specific context. Or like what I brought up earlier, toilet seats from Amazon. How many times are you buying toilet seats? Right? So be very careful about what you're sending out retargeting based on the product. So this is where segmentation can come in as well. What do you think is the difference between just okay and great retargeting emails or sequences?
It's the level and type of content that's going in these emails. If you're going to be reproducing the same content email after email, customers are going to get annoyed. But if you can come up with fresh angles, fresh ideas, it's the same across the whole life cycle, right? But it just seems that retargeting emails can be doing it quite badly. And that's so important. A couple of those emails, if they had put a couple more sections in about the brand, their USPs, they could have raised them to excellent pieces of comms. So all it takes is that, really.
I think funnily enough, like the difference between good and great retargeting emails is actually the work outside of emails, which is your positioning and your messaging. 100%. Because you can see when it is strong in a company that their point of view is so clear. Like for example, that clothing company, Huckberry, I feel like I know the guy who's wearing those clothes. Like I can see him in my mind. It's a very specific person that they're tailoring to. Whereas with Larq, it's sort of like, are they going to like people who go to gym or are they, is it hikers? What is it? So I think, funnily enough, I think the really the deciding factor between good and great retargeting sequences is probably the work that you need to do before that, which is the solid brand foundation.
I just think something on that. I really agree, because I think we've again, it's like what I said earlier about every marketer has written copy for vague brands and it's horrible. I want to come up with sections for brands that haven't got all their material and their marketing material and their propositions ready. It's horrible. It can take like hours and hours out of your day, right? You're just trying to it's like squeezing something out of the stone.
It really is, because then you might write something and then you'll come across like a brand that has written like that exact same copy and you're like, no.
Yeah, it's so tough. But if you can and what's frustrating is often it's delaying things by a week. That's what I often think, right? It's okay, we want to get these done in a month or 2 months, right? Instead of just jumping in, just take a week. Just take a week for strategy, and a week or 2 for strategy, and just make sure you've come up with a huge doc of loads of different bits and materials. And then this stuff you'll half your time, I'm making up figures now, 50% increase in time spent on actually an execution. It's just so important. I wish people did it before.
Yeah, well, speaking of like percentages and things, there's a Pareto principle, right? Like, put 80% of your effort into understanding the customer, understanding the data. And honestly, like the last 20%, which is like the execution, will just flow. It'll just be so much easier. One framework that I really like is doing an empathy map, like taking the time to maybe do a customer empathy map or a similar framework, so you can really get in the head of who you're writing for, and then it feels authentic and it feels relevant.
Yeah, I agree. I think just from the comms I get, 90% of the time, again, constant percentages being made up, people don't really know who they're targeting or who they are. And it's kind of vague. They have a vague idea, but it's not an intrinsic. And when you do see a brand who does it properly, oh my God, it works so well. It's incredible.
You feel seen. You
feel seen.
And that's what people want. All right, well, sadly, that flew by, but we've come to the end of the episode. Can you believe it? We talked in great length about retargeting emails to nurture and reintroduce your product and brand to your audience. But if you want to keep your relationship with your audience beyond the glow of the honeymoon period, you'll want to stick around for our episode all about post-purchase emails. In the meantime, we're going to say bye. Bye now. Bye now. Bye-bye.